What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we've got a Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young top 10 list to their live album 4-Way Street, brought to us by a friend, longtime patron, supporter of the channel, Joseph. Always appreciate you, Joseph. I've never listened to this album. Ironically enough, I never listened to Deja Vu totally, and I have a reaction to that up on the channel right now that I just did last week. So it's crazy we get these two that close together, but it should help me kind of give a little better insight into this album. So before we get started, Joseph always has a little bit to say. Just want to get what his thoughts are. He says it's 10 of the best, most significant cuts from one of my favorite live albums, and the one that really made me a fan of just about all things CSNY. Deja Vu was another album I've known and liked since birth, but when Mom received this as a birthday present, it made me appreciate them a lot more. She had a strong preference for the first disc, the acoustic stuff, while I like the electric set just as much. Either way, it spurred to go further and add Solo Neil to the collection, and led to him being my second gig. After all, you'll recall Mr. William Joel, I did a Billy Joel top 10 previously for Joseph of best top 10 openers and closers. Go check that out afterwards. We finally saw CSN together nearly 20 years later, so that's pretty cool. And he says, note, so he can do it before I do with my research, the 1992 CD edition added 4 songs, 1 solo performance from each of the members, which are all great, but I've elected to limit selections to those that appeared on the original release only. I found a little bit more about it. I'm not going to get a ton of research here because it's a long selection here. 4-Way Street is their third album by Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and their second as CSNY, and their first live album went to #1 in the US, a document of their tour from the previous year. The live recordings were taken from shows at the world-famous Fillmore East in New York on June 2nd through June 7th of 1970, the Forum in LA on June 26th through June 28th, 1970, and the Auditorium Theater in Chicago on July 5th, 1970. So they took all of these performances and picked the best ones. At the time this album was recorded, tensions between the band members were high, with their dressing room fights becoming the stuff of rock legend, even being referenced by Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention in their 1971 LP, Fillmore East, in June of '71. The tensions led to CSNY dissolving shortly after the recording of this. They would reconvene for a stadium tour in the summer of '74. The next release of new studio material by the group proper would not be until CSN did it, minus Young, in 1977. At the time of these concerts, many songs included on the eventual album had yet to be released. I thought that was pretty interesting, as part of the combined and individual work of the 4 principals. Side 1 and Side 2, as Joseph kind of alluded to, featured acoustic guitars and demonstrated the band as a group of individuals also pursuing independent careers, while Sides 3 and 4 featured the full band playing electric guitars and rock and roll. So with all that said, let's get to the list. First off, the music won't be in here because it'll get blocked, but there's a Vimeo link below. Go check that out. I'm going to have the lyrics up as I always do. Let's get to the first selection, which is going to look like 2 selections on Spotify as they roll through, but I mean, there's only 30 seconds of this first song. But we have the suite of Judy Blue Eyes, just the coda, with On the Way Home following. Joseph says the album opens slightly oddly, being a slow fade into the last 20 to 30 seconds of CSN's signature song before they introduce Young, and the quartet kicked the album off proper with a superb reading of an Uncle Neil tune penned, but he didn't sing it, in the Buffalo Springfield days. I can understand why the full suite wasn't originally included. Aside from time limitations on vinyl, they clearly elected not to duplicate anything that had already appeared on the official Woodstock releases, but I don't see why a full version couldn't have been included in the expanded release. I don't know, Joseph. They throw everything else on these expanded releases nowadays. All right, guys. Once again, thanks, Joseph. Let's check this out. All right, On the Way Home, of course, started out by the coda to the sweet Judy Blue Eyes. You know, I'm going to go ahead and say this right away. You know, Neil's my favorite of this foursome, and Crosby's my least favorite. Okay, so just going to say that as we go into the next selection in a minute. But they sound fantastic, which I expected that they would. And you know, people think sometimes they think an acoustic side. Okay, the instrumentation's not going to be great. The instrumentation's great because they're so good at the musicianship side of things, and just Neil sounds fantastic, man. And basically the crux of the song, I think, is that he's in love. Maybe he went away and now he's come back. You can tell my dream is real because I love you. Can you see me now? Though we rush ahead to save our time, we're only what we feel, and I love you. Can you feel it now? But in the start of it, he says, when the wind blows, now I won't be back till later on if I do come back at all. But you know me and I miss you now. So I think he's went away, come back, realized what he had. That's what I'm going to go with. Now we're up to one of the 2 6+ minute songs on here. Usually on live albums, there's even more long ones. But don't worry, we're going to make up with it at the end with a massive, massively long track. But next up, we have Triad. Joseph says, a solo spotlight for Crosby, who unleashes with some reluctance based on his introduction the track that was good enough for the Byrds to record, but did not release for decades, and Jefferson Airplane to cover. As a kid, this is one of my least favorite tracks. I do recall Mom trying to explain in PG terms why the song was controversial. Your poor mom trying to explain that. But now that I've joined Crosby and becoming a sex-mad, free-loving hippie, note, this is probably not true. I enjoy it a lot more these days. So here's about this song. It was written by Crosby in '67 while a member of the Byrds. The song's lyrics concern a menage a trois and were largely inspired by the sexual freedom that Crosby enjoyed at his home in Beverly Glen in Los Angeles. The song alludes to author Robert Heinlein's science fiction novel Stranger in a Strange Land, with references to sister lovers and water brothers. If you don't know what a menage a trois is, then you don't need to worry about it. I'm not going to explain it to you, but I did read some more background on this song that basically, the Byrds said, Crosby said they wouldn't record the song because it's too controversial. It's part of the reason why he wanted to leave the group. One of the many reasons. They said, no, it just wasn't good enough. It didn't fit in with the album. It had nothing to do with the content. So you know how that he said goes in the breakup of groups, but that was their side of it. Triad. All right, I like the convo at the start. It's almost a 2-minute convo. I like when live albums include, so you kind of feel like you're part of the experience. I thought Crosby sounds great on this. The pacing of the song was just way too slow for me. But I'm sure that's just how the song is, not just in a live environment. It's just so slow. But he's basically making the case. He's in a relationship with these 2 girls, and they're both in love with him. And he says, I love you too, but I don't really see, why can't we go on as 3? And then basically tell him, I know that your mother would tell you this is wrong. I can see her over your shoulder, so to speak, in a metaphorical way. But he says, but I don't really see why we can't go on as 3. We love each other, is plain to see. So he's making this case that, look, I love both of you. Why can't we just have a relationship with the 3 of us? So bold, David, bold. And even put it in song form, man, trying to make your case. Now we're going to go on to the 3rd selection on here, The Lee Shore. Joseph says Crosby's joined by Nash for this one. The studio version really should have found its way onto Deja Vu. It's a short album, so it wouldn't have had to replace anything. This is Joseph talking on this line, though I'm a minority of one who would have been happy to lose Our House. Hey man, Our House is a great song, but he brought that up on a live stream. We do live streams. Check out our Twitch link below for those. Those are a lot of fun, but he actually mentioned that. Someone else mentioned they don't like Our House either. So I don't know what's going on with you guys. Our House is a great song. Probably a spoiler alert, Our House is not going to be included on this list. But this song wouldn't see the light of day until the 1991 CSN box set. In any case, Crosby proves himself to be almost as good at a nautical themed tune as a certain Mr. Lightfoot. Now that is a big statement. And you can hear why Crosby and Nash worked as a duo for much of the 70s. Even as the larger group imploded. All right, The Lee Shore. I think they sounded fantastic. I alluded to it during the reaction. And I like acoustic stuff a lot, right? Give me some Dylan, give me some Uncle Neil. This one also was just so slowly paced, man. It's not really my thing. Just a little story about, wheel, goal, spin, and glide. You've got no place to hide because you don't need one. All along the Lee Shore, shells lie scattered in the sand. Here's one like Sunrise. It's older than it's still lying there where some careless wave forgot it long ago. When he woke that morning, he dove beneath his home and watched the fish roam. Then he heard a story from the sailors. There's another island a day's run away from here, and it's empty and free. From here to Venezuela, there's nothing more to see than 100,000 islands flung like jewels upon the sea for you and me. And then sunset smells of dinner. Women are calling at me to end my tales, but perhaps I'll see you the next quiet place. I furl my sail. So a nice little tune there. Mr. Lightfoot, it is not, Joseph. And I know you didn't say it was, but you said almost. And I don't know about that, but a pretty good tune. Now we're going to go to Right Between the Eyes. Joseph says, side 2 opens with another oddity. A hilariously botched group attempt at this Graham Nash tune. Spoiler alert, they don't even make it to the end of the first line before we get another take, presumably from a different show. And as I mentioned at the start, there were probably 10 shows in there that they were drawn from, featuring just Nash and Crosby. Of the song, Nash told Rolling Stone, quote, I was seduced by a beautiful woman down in Long Island. She was married. The song is a confession to a friend. Not certain of the timeline, but can't help, this is Joseph now talking, not certain of the timeline, but can't help but think it may also have instead been inspired by the time he turned up with Rita Coolidge to tell Stills, who'd been dating Coolidge, that they were together. Supposedly the prime catalyst for the subsequent splintering of the group. You know, I could see that's a possibility, because if I'm dating a woman and then somebody in my band, a friend of mine, shows up and they're arm in arm to let me know they're together, I might be a little ticked at that. That might cause just a little bit of tension that I really don't want to see your face tonight on stage or maybe ever again. So that's quite the story. But man, the 70s were a little crazy, right between the eyes. Very well written, and you know, when you kind of put yourself in the position of what this is probably written about, it ends each verse, a man's a man who looks a man right between the eyes. In other words, let's be honest. In the second verse, in the pain that we can bring to him, I don't think he could beat. Please don't ask me how I know. I've just been up that street, and all the people living there have been silenced by their own lies. A man's a man who looks a man right between the eyes. So a very well-written song. I think vocally it works for me. I really like the start of the song where there is the mess up, and kind of, once again, it brings you in that live environment. That's the key to a good live album, not just live performances, but make me feel like I'm a part of the concert itself. That's key. So really did enjoy that one. Never go to a song I do know, Cowgirl in the Sand. Joseph says, solo Neil time now. And decades before the MTV Unplugged craze of the 90s, he demonstrated how you take a sprawling epic rock song and turn it into a dazzling 4-minute acoustic number better than anyone else has managed before or since, in Joseph's humble opinion. First released on his 1969 album, Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere, which we do have a proper review up if you want to check that out after this. Young wrote it while he was suffering from the flu and with a high fever at his home in California. He wrote a few other songs the same way from this album. Songs' lyrics are about a promiscuous woman, or perhaps 3 different women if each verse describes a different woman. Although Young himself has claimed that Cowgirl in the Sand is about his impressions of beaches in Spain, despite the fact that he wrote the song before he'd ever been to Spain. So, you know, the revisionist history of songwriters. Cowgirl in the Sand, Uncle Neil showing you how it's done. That was not hyperbole. Joseph's intro to this one. This one is fantastic. Just fantastic. The acoustic guitar. Neil's voice is just pristine. The song itself, Neil is just such a great songwriter. He uses a classic songwriting technique. There's 3 verses, 7 lines each verse. The last 3 lines are all the same. Old enough now to change your name. When so many love you, is it the same? It's the woman in you that makes you want to play this game. You know, I said it to you in the way he sings it. Not as well. But the first line is hello, Cowgirl in the Sand. So I guess he just decided, hey, Cowgirl in the Sand sounds like a good name. So far, my favorite on here. Yes, I'm already skewing towards my bias towards Neil, but a fantastic song. Now it's time to get on to the second half of this list. And we have 49 bye-byes / America's Children. Joseph says, Stills gets a solo spotlight here. After an introduction from Neil that made me think these two had been friends since childhood, I was really surprised to find out years later they'd known each other only for 5 or 6 years at this point. And interestingly, he's on piano rather than guitar. Not that his proficiency on other instruments is surprised to anyone who's ever read the credits of any album he's ever been on. There's a reason he was dubbed Captain Many Hands by Crosby and Nash. I'll admit that certain aspects of this cut haven't dated all that well. But the performance is first rate regardless, and I still dig it right on, he says. So this is the other song that's 6+ minutes, so let's check it out. 49 bye-byes, America's Children, which really is just a rendition of Stop, What's That Sound from Buffalo Springfield with him just throwing some other stuff in there. It's quite an interesting song. The piano work and Stills, he just sounds fantastic on the first half of the song. And then he brings up the energy in the second half. The energy is still brought up from the piano, just adding a difference from just that slow acoustic that we've had so far. So I did like that. I thought he sounded great. You know, the Drifter came in and he let it play out with Stills' girl and the Drifter. Maybe he thought that they weren't going to end up together, and they ended up leaving him, and now he's all alone. And then he gets in that I want you to clap your hands as he starts to up that piano. Clap your hands a little bit louder now, a little bit louder now. He just goes into kind of a rant, you know, sort of how, you know, ran against the politicians and people that have been shot down, and what are you going to do? And Yeah, I thought the next to the last verse was pretty, you know, that paranoia strikes deep into your life, it's going to creep. And it starts when you're always afraid. Step out of line, the man comes, he's going to shoot you down. This is way back in early 70s, and this is kind of how the America I live in now is. There's paranoia running rampant. This person's going to get you. This person's going to get you. They're trying to wrong you. They're trying to take this freedom. They're doing this to you. It's just insane, man. And 50 years earlier, Stills was singing about this. It's, well, I won't say it's way worse now. I was born in 1971. I don't know that it's way worse now. In my lifetime, it's way worse now. So almost a relevant song now. Now we're on to number 7, Love the One You're With. Joseph says the acoustic disc closes out with a full group performing what we all know now as Stills' biggest solo hit. I don't know if we all know that. Maybe I don't. Though the studio version also had Crosby and Nash on it anyway. But the time of the recording was entirely new to the audience. I love the ripple of laughter they give when Nash announces a song, but it sure goes down well, and I prefer this take to the hit studio recording. I found his release as a lead single from his debut studio self-titled album in November of 1970. It became his biggest hit single, as Joseph alluded to, peaking at 14 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1971. The story of the song is interesting. Stills wrote the song after being inspired by the tagline, "If you can't be with the one you love the one you're with," which was a frequent remark by musician, the great Billy Preston. Stills explained in 1991, quote, "This song's been very good to me. The title came from a party with Billy Preston. I asked him if I could pinch this line he had, and he said, sure. So I took the phrase and wrote a song around it. It's a good time song, just a bit of fun. My favorite part is the steel drums. I played them before a little bit, but I just kept diddling around till I found the right notes." All right, man. Love the one you're with. I did like the intro in there, and the crowd's laughing because the tagline kind of sounds like it's going to be funny, but so I do see why they did that since we weren't familiar with the song. Much more fast-paced. The acoustic work on here is fantastic. My favorite part's the harmonizing on the choruses, even though it's going to end up being a still solo project, as Joseph said. The guys appear on the album anyway. The lyrics, if you're down and confused and you don't remember who you're talking to, concentration slips away because your baby's so far away, then he gets in that chorus, you know, can't be with the one you love the one you're with. Don't be angry, don't be sad, don't sit crying over good times you had. There's a girl right next to you, and she's waiting for something to do. Then we get the chorus in verse 3. Turn your heartache right into joy. She's a girl and you're a boy, so get it together and make it nice. You ain't going to need any more advice, and then back into the chorus. So I enjoyed that one. So we're 7 songs through. We only have 3 left, and I should have stated this at the start, and I didn't, so that's on me, but I'll just state it now. These songs are just Joseph's favorites, and they're just in the running order. They're not ranked 1 through 10, right? Just the order that they appear on the album. So the first 7 songs were from the acoustic part of the album, so we only got 3 from the electric. We got Pre-Road Downs. Joseph said, this electric portion of the set, during which they're joined by Johnny Barbata on drums and Calvin Fuzzy Samuels on bass, kicks off with his Nash tune. Originally a so-so cut on the CSNY debut, the group lit a fire under it on this take. Musically, and Nash's vocal is much gutsier too. It almost feels like an entirely different song as a result. I'm not familiar with the original, so looking forward to it. Well, they definitely get to let loose. Fantastic musicianship here. The guitar work. They get after it, man, after the acoustic set. I don't know the original, but Nash sounds really good on this one. Basically, he's telling this girl, I've kissed you, so I'll miss you. On the road, I'll be wanting you, but I have you because I love you, and you have me because you love me too. So he's telling his girl goodbye, and he kind of runs through that. Don't run, the time approaches, hotels and midnight coaches. Be sure to hide the roaches. Even though he's talking about hotels, I don't think he's talking about roaches, bugs, but he's talking about roaches like the end of a joint. Felt rejected as expected. You rejected all the thoughts of words, so I'll pray with you to stay with me forever. We'll make it work. So I guess it's all going to work out in the end when he comes back off the road. At least that's my take on it, which might not be correct. And now we're up to another Uncle Neil song. We have Ohio. Joseph says, on the contrary, this one differs little from the studio recording compared to our last tune. But given that it can only have been recorded a matter of weeks before this performance, has no surprise. That said, Crosby really ups the ante on his famous cries of why towards the end. I have a lot of info on this song. It's a protest song, countercultural anthem written and composed by Neil in reaction to the Kent State shootings of May 4th, 1970. 14 in the U.S., 16 in Canada. It's in the Grammy Hall of Fame. He wrote the lyrics after seeing photos of the incident in Life magazine. You know, we got to remember, guys, 50 plus years ago, life didn't move so fast where something happens, we get on our phone, and 30 seconds later we can see it and read about it. It's a slow roll, right? It had to You only got the information that you were privy to. Did you watch it on the news? If you didn't watch it on the news, did you read the newspaper? That's pretty much it. The 10 o'clock news of the newspaper. It wasn't 24-hour news. So after he saw it in Life magazine, I guess it crystallized with Neil. After the single's release, it was banned from some AM radio stations because of the challenge to the Nixon administration and the lyrics, but received airplay on underground FM stations in larger cities and college towns. The lyrics help evoke the turbulent mood of horror, outrage, and shock in the wake of the shootings, especially the line, 4 dead in Ohio, repeated throughout the song. 10 soldiers and Nixon coming refers to Kent State shootings where Ohio National Guardsmen shot and killed 4 students. Crosby once said that Young keeping Nixon's name in the lyrics was, quote, the bravest thing I ever heard. The American counterculture took the group as its own after this song, giving the 4 a status as leaders and spokesmen they would enjoy to a varying extent for the rest of the decade. I know this song, and it is fantastic. Ohio. There's not a lot to these lyrics. I think it's important to understand, one, the power you would have felt listening to this song live during this time. And 2, this just wasn't done. Not like this, not an out-and-out call. There's tons of protest songs in the 60s, but he's calling out the President of the United States just bluntly, and it's just so good. This the power of it. He starts out right away, 10 soldiers and Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming. 4 dead in Ohio, the way they say it. Then the chorus, got to get down to it. Soldiers are gunning us down. Should have been done long ago. What if you knew her and found her dead on the ground? How can you run when you know? And then again, that bridge of just the na, na, na. And then the chorus again, the same verse to start out that it started with, and then the outro, the 4 dead in Ohio, and they just go over and over as the electric kind of kicks even harder and harder. And then, yeah, Crosby's going on with that. What? It had to be so powerful live. It had to be powerful for them to play. It's just a great song and an iconic song and an important song just in 70s music for all the reasons that we detailed here. Now we're going to the final selection. You have Carry On. Joseph says, and we end on a raw, epic jam. Again, this is a world away from the pristine studio version, but in this case, I love both. He said, when lesser reaction channels, the ones that don't do any research, no issue with that here, get to the Deja Vu version. They often say daft things like, oh, you can really tell the difference Neil Young made to this band, despite the fact that he isn't actually on it. He only appears on 5 of Deja Vu's 10 tracks. Not a lot of people know that. I actually do know that, Joseph, because I just reviewed the album last week, but I get what you're saying 100%. And the guitar playing they're enthusing about is all stills on this track. Well, here Neil very much is on it. He's in your right ear with stills in your left, and you can really tell the difference he made to the band. And here's the story behind this song. When nearing the end of the recording sessions for Deja Vu, Nash told Stills they still didn't have an opening track. Stills took 2 songs, one being the song Questions he'd written for and recorded at Buffalo Springfield, and edited them together with parts of a jam session from a few days earlier to produce one finished piece that starts out the Deja Vu album. Session drummer Dallas Taylor that was in that recording session said the song was written in the middle of the Deja Vu sessions when Nash told Stephen they still didn't have an opener for the album. It was something of a message to the group since it had become a real struggle to keep the band together at that point. Stephen combined 2 unfinished songs, stuck them onto a jam we'd had out in the studio a few nights before, me on drums and Stephen on the Hammond B3 organ. This was also an inspiration for, of all people, Led Zeppelin. Led Zepp 3, they have a track called Friends, and supposedly this was inspired by it, including a similar slack string, C-tuned acoustic opening. We know that Mr. Page would like to be inspired by things from time to time for Zepp, so it's probably true. This shows it's over 14 minutes long, but I know it ends out with some introductions and that sort of stuff that we're going to skip, so let's check it out. All right, an epic 13-minute rendition of Carry On. The song itself is great. It's well written. Basically the lovers are not necessarily getting along and kind of going their separate ways. It's don't suffocate me in the relationship. Go your way, I'll go mine, and carry on. The sky's clearing, the night has gone out, the sun he come, the world is all full of love. Rejoice, rejoice, we have no choice but to carry on. Carry on, love is coming to us all. Where are you going now, my love? Where will you be tomorrow? Will you bring me happiness? Will you bring me sorrow? Oh, the questions of 1,000 dreams. What you do with what you see. Lover, can you talk to me? Girl, when I was on my own chasing you down, what was it that made you run? Trying your best just to get around. The questions of 1,000 dreams. What you do and what you see. Lover, can you talk to me? that's the first half of the song. I thought it had great energy. I even mentioned during that part that this had the best guitar, Stills and Young, just the best guitar work on this album. And then they just go, and the last half of this song is just an epic solo of them just almost, they're playing off each other, they're talking to each other, their guitars. It's absolutely fantastic. For me, it's too long of a jam. I know it's great. The musicianship is top notch. I think live it would be great, and obviously it's a live album, so it's got to be on. For me, that part just went on a little bit too long. A 13-minute song is a bit much for this guy, but I recognize it for what it is, which is fantastic, top rate musicianship. That's going to bring me to my favorite tracks. I have 3 honorable mentions. I have the first song, which was, of course, it's the coda of Sweet Judy Blue Eyes with On the Way Home. That's an honorable mention. Right Between the Eyes is an honorable mention. And of course, this last song, Carry On. You've got to recognize the brilliance of the songwriting and the brilliance of the musicianship, specifically from Stills and Nash. That gets an honorable mention. My faves, Cowgirl in the Sand, 49 Bye-Bye / America's Children with Stills there, and of course, Ohio. Yes, it's heavily Neil influenced. 4 of the 6 tracks are Neil, but I did enjoy this one, and I feel like I've gone from not knowing much about CSNY. We also have a top 10 of them up that we did for another patron of ours, Rich. That's fantastic. We did that a long time ago. Go check out the Deja Vu reaction I have up, and then this one. So a great selection, Joseph. Thank you for guiding me in the CSNY knowledge. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you have to be a patron in any way, like Joseph is, and help us out, check out the Patreon link below or the patron link on the end screen. The patrons make this thing go. Until next time, guys, I will see you.